My friends, welcome back. In the previous video we analyzed a specific number of Russian Marine units, how they started, how they were doing in the Cold War and how they were doing in the Ukrainian invasion. Newsflash, not very great. In this video we'll continue with it. We have many units for you, and also we'll look at the future of these units, because Putin has given some signature. He has plans for the Russian Marine units not to be used as regular storming infantry as they're used right now in Ukraine, but to be used to take the Arctic, for example. Let's begin with the 336th Guards Marine Brigade. In the Baltic Fleet we have the 336th Guard Marine Infantry Brigade. Based in Baltisk, Kaliningrad Oblast, this unit uses a dolphin as its mascot. Not quite like the polar bear or a tiger, but I'm not judging. The origins of the 336th date back to World War II, when the 347th Infantry Regiment of the 308th Infantry Division was formed, drawing recruits from the Omsk Infantry School and the regions of Omsk, Altai Krai and the Altai Republic. The regiment saw its first significant combat on the Stalingrad front, where it earned the Order of the Red Banner for its valiant actions. It then participated in the counter-offensive that would turn the tide of the war, eventually being transformed to the Kalinin front. After the war, the regiment was deployed to Minsk, where it became part of the 120th Guards Division. In 1957, it was reorganized as Motorized Assault Division, but it wasn't until 1963 that the regiment's identity would truly shift, as it was made into the 336th Independent Marine Regiment and moved to Baltisk. As part of the Soviet Union's strategic shifts, the 336th became a core component of the Soviet Marines, eventually renaming it the 336th Guards Marine Brigade in 1979. The brigade's next major combat experience came during the First Chechen War. In January 1995, the brigade's 877th Battalion captured the Chechen Presidential Palace in Grozny. Fast forward to 2015, and the 879th Battalion, part of the 336th Brigade, found itself deployed in Syria. As part of Russia's military involvement in the Syrian civil war, the brigade took part in several key operations. At the beginning of 2022, the Baltic Fleet sent 3 of its 4 Propusha-class destroyers with Marines to the Black Sea. The naval landing in the direction of Mykolaiv and Odessa was cancelled, and the respective units were deployed to besiege Mariupol. The brigade's role in the southern and eastern fronts of the war was marked by fierce combat and significant losses. In just a few months of the conflict, the brigade lost 40 soldiers, including its chief of staff and deputy commander. My friends, you have been with me for almost 4 years now. We have seen that united, we can make a difference in this war. We can help the Ukrainians. And you did help them. You donated. Not once, not twice, but 8 times. For 8 times I traveled to Ukraine to hand over the tens of trucks and hundreds of drones you bought for the Ukrainian units. These trucks and drones directly saved Ukrainian soldiers' lives. Soldiers who got to live another day, fight another day for their homes and families. Here on YouTube, I have not been able to tell you the whole story, the truth about what happened while I was in Ukraine. Countless times we fell under Russian drone and missile attacks. Countless times I felt the fear of death. And countless times I promised myself that I will not stop out of fear. On my final mission in Ukraine, my wife was with me. In fact, we spent our honeymoon in a war zone in Ukraine, the best honeymoon one can hope for. Here you can see her shooting guns with the SPU Alpha Group, the best special forces Ukraine has to offer. All of this is written down for you in my book, 8 Missions in Ukraine. I ask you to read it, to witness everything I witnessed, to share these experiences, because this is our story through this war, and it is intertwined with the story of Ukrainian people. Get 8 Missions in Ukraine through the link in the description below. Get it for yourself. Get it for someone who cares about the Ukrainian people's fight for freedom. United, my friends, we will win. Slava Ukraini. 810th Guards Marine Brigade. We all know that Russian Black Sea Fleet has taken a pounding. The Ukrainian army has been working overtime to transform it into one of the biggest submarine fleets in the world, if you know what I mean. Well, the Marines of the Black Sea Fleet haven't been doing much better. Based in Sevastopol, the 810th Separate Guards Marine Infantry Brigade. Whew, that's a mouthful. That brigade stands as one of Russia's most battle-hardened but also most destroyed military units. The history of the 810th Brigade dates back to 1967, when the Soviet Union transformed the 810th Separate Naval Infantry Regiment in Sevastopol. The Cold War was in full swing, and the Soviet Navy needed a robust force capable of amphibious warfare in the Black Sea. Originally a regiment, the unit quickly grew in importance and size. By 1979, it was restructured into a full brigade, tasked with protecting Soviet interests and projecting power in the Mediterranean and beyond. Throughout the Cold War, the brigade participated in numerous missions, including deployments to Egypt, Syria, and the Caspian Sea. It became known for its capability in amphibious operations and was often seen as the spearhead of the Soviet naval strategy. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, the brigade found itself at the center of political upheaval. Stationed in Crimea, it became the critical unit in the dispute between Russia and Ukraine, especially during the 1991 coup attempt and the 1990s ethnic conflicts. One of the most controversial chapters in the brigade's history took place in Azerbaijan in January 1990. Deployed under the orders of the Soviet government, the brigade was part of a military crackdown on Azerbaijani nationalists who had been protesting for independence. Instead of peacekeeping, the unit played a role in enforcing martial law, with reports of violent suppressions and over 100 civilian casualties. This operation, known as Black January, led to widespread condemnation. Many of the soldiers, including those from the 810th, later expressed their disillusionment with the mission, feeling that they had been sent to crush the aspirations of the Azerbaijani people for self-determination. This mission left a deep impression on the Ukrainian commander of the brigade's 880th Battalion, Major Vitaly Rozhmanov. Because of that, in 1992, Rozhmanov and the 880th Battalion decided to swear allegiance to newly independent Ukraine. These soldiers formed the 1st Ukrainian Marine Unit, the 1st Independent Naval Battalion, which is now part of the 36th Independent Naval Brigade. The 810th Brigade participated in the Georgian-Abkhazian conflict and the Second Chechen War. The 810th was also the only Marine Brigade which participated in the attack against Georgia in 2008. 2 battalions of the brigade landed on the coast of Abkhazia on the 3rd day of the war and moved from there together with the 76th Guard Airborne Division, the 7th Assault Division, and the 20th Guards Motorized Assault Division into the Georgian interior. By the mid-2010s, the 810th Brigade had found itself once again in war. Deployed to Syria as part of Russia's intervention, the brigade played a key role in guarding the Khmeimim air base. For its deployment in Syria, the brigade was awarded the prestigious Order of Zhukov, but the brigade's biggest challenge was yet to come. In February 2022, the brigade was thrust into the center of Russian invasion of Ukraine. The 810th Brigade played a critical role in the siege of Mariupol, where it faced intense urban warfare, particularly in the battle for Azovstal steel plant. The brigade suffered heavy losses in Mariupol, with over 40 soldiers confirmed killed, including its commander, Colonel Alexei Sharov. Despite these setbacks, the brigade was rebuilt with reinforcements drawn from the sailors of, at that time, the newest Russian submarine, cruiser Moskva. Throughout 2023 and 2024, the brigade faced continued challenges. It was deployed first to Kherson and then to Kursk region, where it encountered fierce resistance from Ukrainian forces. In the face of these repeated defeats, reconstructed several times. 177th Marine Regiment. Last up, we have the smallest fleet of the Russian Navy, Unlike other fleets, the Caspian flotilla guards not the actual sea, but rather the Caspian Sea, the world's biggest lake. Correspondingly, the 177th Marine Regiment is the smallest and newest Marine branch. The regiment traces its roots to the 414th Separate Marine Battalion, created in August 1999 during the Dagestan War. Formed from units across different naval fleets, these Marines were quickly thrown into battle, later seeing action near Chechnya. With Russia's growing military involvement abroad, the regiment's legacy continued in Syria. From February 23, 2016, a contingent of Caspian Marines was tasked with guarding the strategic Khmeimim air base, securing Russia's military presence in the region. A new chapter began on November 26, 2018. The 177th Marine Regiment was officially formed in the city of Kaspiysk, Dagestan. In the beginning of 2022 invasion, the regiment fought in the Donetsk Oblast, capturing Volnovakha and encircling Mariupol. By spring of 2023, the regiment was deeply involved in the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, fighting in the Zaporizhia region. Reports suggested heavy losses as it faced determined Ukrainian resistance. Later, it fought against Ukrainian Marines in the Kherson Oblast. Currently, it has been fighting with other Marine units in Bakrovsk. So how has the war in Ukraine affected Russian naval forces? In the first weeks of the 2022 invasion, multiple battalions of the Russian Marines waited in their landing ships on the Black Sea. Some forces did land close to Mariupol, but the main assault against Odessa never came. Russian forces never advanced beyond Mykolaiv, and so the Marines were not activated. This was 3 years ago. Now, such a reckless plan will certainly not happen again. Russia does not have control over the Black Sea, so packing a battalion of Marines into a landing ship would only save them the salaries of grave diggers. If we want to see how the Marines will conduct landings in the future, we need to look at the battles fought over Snake Island and the oil platforms, or more lately, the fight on Dnipro in the Kherson Oblasts. It's all small, specialized teams moving fast and quietly. This is very important in Ukraine. Move fast and don't stand out. The next decade of amphibious warfare will be more mobile, stealthy and unpredictable. This is at least when the Russian Marines are used in their actual purpose role. In all seriousness, Russia has not been using their Marines as Marines. Russia's military high command has been honing its skill of throwing badly trained units against defensive lines. However, for some jobs, you do need people who more or less know what they're doing. That's where Russia uses its Marines and VDV units, which are not designed for that, but which at least are reliable. Russian naval infantry has been used in the heaviest battles of the war because they are the units Russian command can trust to do their job. If you want to see which front worries the Russian command the most, look where they deployed the Marines. However, this is also a huge problem for Russia. These units came in with a lot of experienced officers and NCOs from previous conflicts and then got ripped into pieces time and time again. Sure, the ones who survive are extremely experienced, but most do not survive. As the soldiers with actual naval experience get killed, the new ones will not have the training of naval infantry. In the future, Russia wants to create a marine force that is many times its current size. They might find enough manpower to do that, but it will be just another part of the army, not a marine unit. Special force, not a specialist force. You could even call it a very special force. So, what lies in the future of the Russian naval infantry? Russian Marines will play a big part in the expansion of Russian armed forces. It is planned that all the current 5 brigades will be transformed into divisions. This would mean that each of them would be 4 times larger than they currently are. Special forces units like the Marines have had many casualties in Ukraine, but they have also received a lot of experience. I could see these new units having a quite capable officer corps made of Ukraine war veterans. However, if they wish to increase the size so dramatically, they will need to lower the standards for people who they recruit. If the war in Ukraine ends on favorable conditions for Russia, the role of Russian naval infantry will likely be huge. Before the invasion of 2022, Putin was planning on giving his Marines a brand new, if I dare to say so, American-colored coat of paint. This would have meant being reinforced with more armor and taking their place as Russia's expeditionary force for a range of military and political missions. So I could definitely imagine a future in which Russia starts to deploy its marines to countries such as Sudan, Libya or Madagascar. Other places that we could see the Russian marines in the future are the numerous islands in the Arctic and Baltic seas. NATO is currently on somewhat shaky grounds, and positioning troops on one of those smaller uninhabited islands could be just the move needed to divide the alliance. Some analysts have reported that the town of Narva could be attacked by Russian forces to test the willingness of our alliance to fight a war for it. But what if instead they land some marines on an island like Uhtyu? It has nothing on it. Sure, taking a couple of hectares of bird shit would not exactly be a great Russian victory, but do the NATO countries have the will to take it back? In the longer perspective, Russia aims to build up its marines to potentially take control of the Baltic Sea islands like Gotland and Öland. If they manage to do that, this would mostly isolate the Baltics from sea and air support. With the Arctic melting, we shouldn't forget those areas either. It's no coincidence that Russia is called the world's biggest gas station. Russia loves extracting natural resources. 20% of its GDP is generated in the Arctic. So, Russia is very interested in taking control of the Arctic. Russian Marines of the Northern Fleet have been training for those missions. Russian Marines have had some practice with taking over oil platforms on the Black Sea, so this could very well be the next step in shadow war that they are already conducting in Europe. And if they ever wanted to have a firmer grip on the Arctic, they could land Marines on the islands of Svalbard. These islands have been demilitarized by the treaty between Norway and Russia. Russia has repeatedly tried to increase its influence there, helped by the fact that Russia can establish mines and bring in their workers, which make up a considerable part of its population. Conclusion: when Peter the Great established the first Russian naval infantry units, it was a part of his plan to transform Russia into a European country. More than 3 centuries later, they are, through their brutal actions, a reminder that Russia is, in fact, not a European country. The Russian naval infantry, once envisioned as specialized force for amphibious warfare and rapid expeditionary operations, has found itself thrown into the grinder of prolonged land combat in Ukraine. Rather than storming beaches or executing daring coastal raids, these elite troops have often been used as shock infantry, sustaining devastating losses in grinding offensives far from the sea. Units like the 155th and the 40th Marine Brigades, once symbols of Russian military prestige, have been repeatedly decimated and rebuilt, sometimes with barely trained or aging recruits. Despite this, Russian leadership continues to bank on the Marines' reputation and combat experience, planning to massively expand the force into divisions. However, quantity will not compensate for the loss of institutional knowledge and elite training that once set the Marines apart. The more Russia treats them as regular infantry, the further they drift from their original purpose. Looking ahead, the naval infantry's future may lie not on Ukraine's steppes, but on the icy frontiers of the Arctic, the islands of the Baltic, or resource-rich hotspots in Africa. Yet whether they can fulfill that role will depend on whether Russia can rebuild them, not just in number, but in quality. If not, the Black Berets may remain a shadow of their former selves, elite in name only. This has been my summary of the Russian naval infantry, specific units, their history, and their potential future. Right now, they have been grinded up in Ukraine, but it is up to Russia what they do with them in the future. Thank you for watching, my friends. So subscribe to the channel, become a member, and until my next video, Slava Ukraini, and bye bye.